And I was like, you got to think about your social media as almost like your Tinder profile or like your dating profile. But your leadership team wants you to convert immediately. So that's like saying like, I'm ready for marriage. And if you swipe right, like that's a ring. Like that's an immediate proposal. We're gonna do this tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? Like you would never do that. And so if you really want brand love and you really want a relationship with your customers, you need to treat it like it's an actual human in real life relationship. How does that operate? How does that grow? And like, I'll tell you, like it grows in micro moments. It's your boyfriend goes to the store and he got you your favorite drink because he saw it and thought of you. Not because you asked. It's the moments where they remember your birthday or they can tell when you're down and they check in. It's those little micro moments that you wind up not putting in a CRM or you wind up not putting in a task sheet, but it's the stuff that you genuinely would naturally do if you cared about somebody.
Welcome to CXWise, where we share wisdom, insights, stories, and expertise from the world of customer experience. I'm your host, Nate Bennett, and you're about to hear real-world experiences and practical advice that will elevate your CX game, no matter your title and no matter your industry. So, without further ado, let's get wise. My guest today is none other than the brilliant Christina Garnett, the fractional Chief Customer and Communications Officer at New Motion and CX extraordinaire. Christina's a master at building brand loyalty at the intersection of customer experience and social media and community. Featured in major publications like Adweek and Forbes, Christina has helped brands from Fortune 500s to startups optimize customer satisfaction and create meaningful connections. She's also a pro at amplifying voices through advocacy and has even developed frameworks to help brands like HubSpot better understand their audiences. Fun fact, she actually started her career as a math teacher, and that's where she first honed her skills in CX, and I can't wait to hear all about it. Christina, welcome to CXWise. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I hope we didn't embarrass you too much, but there's more accolades we could have said, but we just don't have the time. So
you got to cut it brief.
It's a big deal for you to be here, and we really, really appreciate your time. So thanks. The first question we always ask our guests on CXWise is, what is your definition of customer experience? They can all be different. There's commonalities, but it's important that we're on the same page as far as our terms go. So what's your definition of customer experience?
I'm a Lion King and Disney kid. So there's a scene in The Lion King where it talks about everything the light touches is their domain. Everything the customer touches or sees is a part of the customer experience. And I think if you look at it from that lens, you're going to catch all the missing pieces that a lot of companies don't put into their CX initiatives.
No, I love that. Everything that the light sees, I love that. What was it about your early career as a teacher that informed your future of marketing brilliance?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Steve Jobs' quote where it talks about you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can never connect the dots looking forward. And so my entire career path has been an incredibly windy. I was a math teacher, but I was an English major in college. And even though that wasn't my major, it was something that I was really passionate about. And I really wanted to be there for kids who, very few kids are going to say math is their favorite class. Like it's not going to be the popular class to take, but they know that they need to be in there. And so coming from a place of, I'm just here to make sure that you're successful. I'm here to make sure that you get it and you don't have to love it, but I want it to be as frictionless as possible for you is something that's carried through all of my work. One of the things that I did at one of the schools that I was at was for kids with learning differences. And we learned the Orton-Gillingham method, which is a way of teaching that really reinforces concepts over time. So it goes from short-term to long-term memory. And it's really understanding that people have different learning styles. I think some of the best marketers are former teachers because they have to do differentiated instruction, which means they're going to have one lesson that they have to teach, and they're going to have to teach it in different ways because they understand that there's no one singular pitch that's going to work. They're going to have to use auditory for the auditory learners. They're going to have to use visuals and the whiteboard for the visual learners. They're going to maybe have hands-on demos and exercises for the tactile learners. And that's what good marketers do, is they understand that they have to create content and package it in different ways because we all consume differently. We all learn differently. We all embrace content differently. And so I really think a lot of the the breakdown of my work comes from that person who had to stand at the front of the room and be able to teach. And also it's made me, I hope it's made me a good speaker, because there is nothing, like there's no conference I could go to and speak at that's going to be more negative or harder to deal with than like eighth graders who don't want to be there, especially eighth graders like after lunch. Like they don't want an adult, they want a nap. Like
that's a dangerous crowd.
Yeah, it's a dangerous crowd. So that really kind of cemented a lot of the foundation.
I love it because what you're talking about is personal.
Yeah.
You're talking about meaningful connections. And I guess one of the things that I am wary of in the age of where automation and AI are reshaping customer experiences, how do brands marry that advance in technology and still maintain and ensure that they're still creating those personal and meaningful connections with their customers?
Yeah, no, I think that's an important question, because it really is as much of an art as it is a science. And you see this massive shift for AI, and AI kind of like AI is going to take over everything. But we're already seeing how that's actually not ideal and how it winds up backfiring in a lot of ways. And so I think that whether you're using automation or AI or any other kind of technology, you should be thinking about it from the customer's experience from the get-go, and really kind of figure out what are their needs and what does it look like to you. Because chances are you're using automation and AI because you want to cut cost and you want to drive efficiency. But is the customer going to see those cost changes? Or are they going to pay the same, if not more? Are they going to have a more efficient experience, or is it just the CS team that's going to have more efficiency? And so if you're making decisions that are only benefiting the company and you're not thinking about how that's going to impact the customer, I can already tell you that you're setting yourself up for failure. I'm a big fan of game theory. And so I love the idea of getting into the customer's journey and not just like, here's a mirror board, here's all the different steps, but really dive into those individual milestones and those action points and figure out, where does someone want convenience versus where does someone want humanity? Where does someone have like emotionality tied to it versus they just need to get it done? And so someone has no problem talking to a bot or going through an automated workflow if there's no emotion that's a part of that. As soon as emotion becomes a part of that, they need a human. Yelling in a chat bot does not feel the same. It's kind of the whole thing, like cell phones now, like you can't slam your phone down.
Yeah,
it's like that cool. Feeling doesn't exist. Yeah. It's the same way. Yelling at a chatbot does not, or explaining to a chatbot why this is so bad and so dire does not feel the same as when I'm telling another human. And so understanding what needs to be efficient, what needs to be emotional is a really great first step in figuring out where the technology should stop and start and where the unapologetically human part of your brand should really shine.
I love that. And there's also a piece to it where sometimes the emotional state, especially if it's heightened, if there's a heightened problem, needs efficiency and not touch too.
Yes. Yes.
I once got double charged for a week at a hotel, and called my bank in a panic to say, like, I just got these 2 huge charges, and I was away I was traveling for business. And so when I got to the agent, she tried to maintain a connection with me or start a connection with me. And she told me that the problem that I'm having now is the reason why she only travels with like traveler's checks in her. And I was like, now's not the time.
That is not, your experience has nothing to do with this lady.
This has nothing to do. And meanwhile,
we don't need to connect. Give me my money. Give me my money.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I was like, I'm panicking because there's a lot of money missing from my account now and I need it now. And she's like, oh, well, it's going to take a couple of days for us to get that back to you. And I was like, I don't understand that at all. She needed to understand the urgency and the efficiency that I needed in that moment. And unfortunately, she didn't. But to your point, there are advancements in AI that could have let that agent know what state I was in.
Yes.
Based on how I was speaking.
100%.
And she could have used that augmentation in that moment.
Yeah.
And again, that's about what's it doing for our customer, not necessarily our bottom line. So I love that you made that distinction.
Yeah. And I think having using AI is like the best assistant you've ever had, to basically hold your hand and say, well, based on these patterns, based on the data that we're seeing, based on like the inflection change, we would recommend this. I think the use of AI and the feelings about AI don't need to be binary. Like it doesn't need to be love or hate. Right. There is a world where it can seamlessly be integrated into our life where it actually does make things better. But if it's an all or nothing situation, everyone loses, in my opinion. It isn't going to be able to do it all, but rejecting it, I think, is actually going to set people up for failure as well. And so I think as we're looking at AI, I definitely don't want to come across as a hater or a lover, but come across as a place of, it is just another step in innovation, and having the thoughtfulness to understand where it needs to stop and start is something that I think all brands and all marketers of all, like, regardless of where you are in your career path, it's very important to understand like the repercussions. And if this happens, what will be next?
You talk about game theory, and I'm a little bit aware of it. You talk about game theory and then how you're applying it specifically to marketing and or customer experience.
Probably the easiest way to think about game theory is there's a scene in, I think it's Endgame, but in Marvel with Doctor Strange, and it looks like he's meditating and he's kind of like tweaking out. It looks like he's kind of like vibing. And what he's doing though is he's looking at all of the different variations, all the different multiverses essentially, to see out of all of these different possibilities, how many of them do they actually defeat Thanos in? And then at the very end, there's only one. Yeah. And so what game theory is you're basically looking at all the possible options that could happen from these different choices. So decision trees. And then what does that look like? And then from there, you can look at different types of games, literal games, into how that plays out. So for example, Prisoner's Dilemma. Prisoner's Dilemma is a really great example of a game that you're technically playing when you are trying to gain trust in a customer. They're not a customer yet, but they're considering you. And in order for them to actually buy in, they have to understand that you're actually going to help them. They're going to pay you money, and you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And so Prisoner's Dilemma, you have basically like a Law and Order episode. You have two people that are in different rooms being interrogated. And theoretically, if they trust each other and don't rat on each other, that is the optimal solution. But that only works if you trust that the other person isn't going to rat you out. And it could go either way. So same thing with a potential customer and a brand. If you trust each other, then you're going to choose each other. And the customer's going to pay. It's going to be great. The brand is going to take care of them and do exactly what they offered. And so when you think about things from a game theory perspective and why people do what they do, like what makes them behave the way they do, it's incredibly fascinating. And I find that the people in CX who really get into game theory and get into like behavioral science, they kind of unlock all the opportunities of what CX looks like.
I know that you've worked with huge Fortune 500 companies. You've worked with startups. So give us a listicle. Like, what are the top three biggest differences and how those companies scale and approach customer experience?
So I would say Fortune 500 brands and enterprise brands in general, you're going to go in and assume that they have everything figured out because they're big and they're massive and they've done all these things. And like anyone else who's ever worked at enterprise brand, you're going to go in there and there's going to be messes you never thought there would be. You'd be like, I thought you would have it all figured out. I can tell you not a single brand has every single thing figured out. There's always room for improvement. So number one there. Number two, the biggest difference between an enterprise brand and a startup is that the startup hasn't scaled enough to create silos. There's just too much to do. They haven't grown enough to create the infrastructure that would actually build these silos. And so as most startups grow and start to scale, the biggest problem is themselves. Is like, how can we not get in our own way and remove visibility from other people on the team as we are being more focused on what our individual departments are doing in the grand scheme of things? And so that's a big number two. I think silos are the killer of CX. They strangle it because you can't fix things if you don't know that they exist. And if you don't have visibility, then what can you, like, you have to be reactive because you only see the fire when it's a fire. You literally had a wall between you and the smoke and you couldn't see it. So you couldn't do anything until it became so big, it was impossible to ignore. So that just immediately changes your dynamic between being proactive and reactive. I would say the next thing is technology can't solve everything. And I know that's going to hurt a lot of people. Like there's no like magical tech stack that's going to solve every single problem that the brand has, especially if that tech stack doesn't actually work together and have a clear strategy as to how they talk to each other. Where does the data go from left to right? What is a single source of truth? Who has access to the single source of truth? How do they use that data visibility? And then just having, I find that the trickle down effect from leadership to the ICs, so much gets lost in translation through the middle section that like I saw this as an IC where you're kind of given tunnel vision as to you live and die by the success of these specific KPIs. So you are zoned in on making sure that you are nailing everything possible for those KPIs. But then you'll sit in an all hands meeting and you'll see that what the business cares about are like these 2 or 3 metrics. And unless your management team or you are incredibly like have a strong business acumen, it's very hard to understand how your individual KPIs ladder up to business acumen, to the overall business vision. So if you don't know what that connection is and no one's telling you what that connection is, you can feel lost really quickly. And then you also don't know how to save your job.
Man, I needed to hear everything you just said. I really did. I really appreciate that.
Let's say that you write a blog that is absolutely fantastic. And because of that, they see a webinar coming up and they want to do more. So you have first touch, but they go through all these things. They then go and talk to someone in sales and the demo's horrible. The demo does not go as planned. Does that whole process feeds into the potential customer experience before they lock in. But does that mean that your blog wasn't good enough? Does that mean that the webinar wasn't great? Does it mean that the salesperson's bad or just had a bad day or maybe the demo glitched or like there's so many variables that people don't consider. So when you're saying, well, this person touched it first or this person touched it last, they get credit for it. Yeah. That's also another reason why a lot of companies are struggling with CX because it takes all of them. And I saw this a lot in customer marketing and advocacy because my work was built off of the work of others. The people who loved working and being a Hub fan, they didn't just work with me. They probably had someone in support that like sat down and explained everything to them. They had a sales team that walked them through all the pros and cons of switching to HubSpot. Like all of those touch points before they even knew I existed would make or break how I would have to interact with them. Am I basically rewarding someone who already loves us? Am I sprinkling them with extra love to make them feel special? Or am I having to salvage a relationship? I didn't create whatever that relationship was before they got to me. Everyone before me did. And so CX can't live in one specific department. It can't live in customer advocacy. It can't live in customer marketing. It can't live in support. It has to live as an umbrella across all of these touch points because all of these touch points are what make or break. It's those micro moments that make or break someone with a brand. It could be a social media post that makes them laugh. It could be a TikTok that makes them be like, I didn't know they would do that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's all of these things that factor into this greater microcosm of what does the customer experience. And it's not just when they're in the tool or the product. It's whenever they see anything associated with your brand. And that's really important to think about.
The HubSpot example, trilogy of community meets gaming meets fandom.
Yeah.
If I got that right.
Yeah.
Can you share with our audience that insight, that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was brought into HubSpot, I was brought on to build a advocacy program, formerly called HubStars, turned into HubFans, and it had multiple pieces. So there was a gamified element. You could complete challenges, get points. So you had gamification. Then you had groups where they could connect with each other, have events, things like that. And then fandom. When you have people who genuinely love a product or a brand, how can you make it easy for them to love you? How can you make it easy for them to really kind of showcase and share that fandom? And so one of the things that I created was the inbound correspondence program, which is where you have groups of advocates who get a ticket to inbound and they get to go and they get to show you what it's like to be there, but from the civilian perspective, from the fans' perspective. They're going to tell you about the workshops that they were a part of, the sessions that they went to, the people that they connected with, the employees that the Hub fans and other HubSpot employees that they met while they were on site. And what they're doing is you're creating an opportunity, you're giving them the mic and letting them say like, go crazy, go have fun, go share your perspective. And so I think if you kind of create this mixture where you understand that gamification doesn't work for everybody, community doesn't work for everybody. There's some people who just want to stay at home. Like they just want to live their hobbit life. Like they don't need to be out there like connecting with people. But then you also have fandom. People are genuinely extremely excited about certain things and they want to share that. They want to celebrate it. And when a brand embraces that and kind of pours gasoline on it, those people get even louder. They're going to advocate for you. They're going to send you referral traffic. They're going to be their own kind of monetization package themselves because they're going to be what people believe. People are getting, they know what influencers look like. They know what an ad looks like. We don't trust a lot of that anymore. We're looking for people who've had a similar problem. What did they do to solve that? And that's why you're seeing so many people go to Reddit. Like Reddit searches are huge because I saw somebody talk on Twitter the other day and they made a comment that says like, if you type in a problem you have in Reddit and no one's ever had that problem before, you're cooked. Because like everyone has shared like, I went through this and this is what happened, and everyone's sharing their stories and recommendations and stuff like that. And so I think that speaks to the fact that we want to learn from each other. We want to unpack our own experiences so that others can have an easier situation, can have an easier time. And so we want to learn from other people. And I think that that's also something else that AI has done. I think AI has actually brought a lot of people closer because we've realized how cold it can be to try to talk to something that's not human. And so it's made us realize like, what is it about being unapologetically human that we're attracted to, that we want to bond with, that we want to learn from, so that when we are going on social or we're going online or researching or trying to find a solution to our problem, we're desperately looking for a human to tell us what to do instead of an AI.
Yeah. You mentioned Hub Fans. You've also advised on to build multiple advocacy programs. Hey Orca stands. Like you are kind of a pioneer in a lot of these regards. And I'm wondering, like, where do you start when you're building a successful advocacy marketing program? Like, how do you what are some of the key steps when you're starting from scratch?
One of the first things I do is I do two things first. So the first thing would be going through like the journalism questions. So the who, what, why, when, where, and how. I find that that's a really good blueprint to just start figuring out like, who is this for? What would be the expectations? What can they expect? How would they use it? How would they enter? Why would they be excited to be a part of this? All those things. And then the second thing is customer interviews. I'm absolutely obsessed with customer interviews. I love being able to go straight to the source and saying, what has been your experience with us? What does that look like? And then really asking the uncomfortable questions to get down to the stuff that they aren't going to necessarily voluntarily tell you. So like one of the questions when I joined HubSpot and I knew what I was going to be working on, one of the first things I did was I went on Twitter and LinkedIn and was like, if you're a HubSpot fan, slide into my DMs. I want to talk to you. And I did customer interviews. And the one question, especially the people who loved us, the one question I asked them in return was, when was the last time we made you feel like we loved you? Like, I have no doubt you love us. I have no doubts. When was the last time you felt loved in return? And that was really eye-opening because it will not only, they'll usually tell you a story or they'll say, I never really thought of it like that. Probably never. Or they'll tell you exactly what their love language would be. And I think if you think about advocacy, we talk a lot about like brand love, but then you don't treat people the way you would a relationship.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I did a talk in Canada and we were talking about this kind of thing and like social media specifically. And I was like, you got to think about your social media as almost like your Tinder profile or like your dating profile. But your leadership team wants you to convert immediately. So that's like saying like, I'm ready for marriage. And if you swipe right, like that's a ring. Like that's an immediate proposal. We're gonna do this tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? Like you would never do that. And so if you really want brand love and you really want a relationship with your customers, you need to treat it like it's an actual human in real life relationship.
Yes.
How does that operate? How does that grow? And like, I'll tell you, like it grows in micro moments. It's your boyfriend goes to the store and he got you your favorite drink because he saw it and thought of you. Not because you asked, It's the moments where they remember your birthday, or they can tell when you're down and they check in. It's those little micro moments that you wind up not putting in a CRM, or you wind up not putting in a task sheet, but it's the stuff that you genuinely would naturally do if you cared about somebody. Like if someone is in your community that your brand is built and they've been radio silent for 2 weeks, the community manager who cares is going to notice that and is going to check in and be like, hey, I've missed you. Is everything okay? I doubt the AI is going to be like, you should check on them. You're going to start seeing those micro moments and the things, those little like tiny steps. Getting an email from leadership to say like, hey, I saw that you were on this like product feedback call that we had, and I loved your idea. Thank you so much for attending. That took like 2 minutes. The person who receives that email is going to cherish it.
Yep. And that's how you build that relationship of trust as well, creating those moments. Super valuable. Speaking of customer feedback management, what do you see as like the main issue or problem with brands who have a good CFM program or platform in place, but yet their customer experience still isn't measuring up?
Yeah. I think it's a few things. So one thing would be, is there psychological safety for customers? Because there's some customers that have feedback for you, but maybe like, let's say that you're a big fan of a brand and you have a negative experience, but you don't want to share that negative experience because you're afraid that it's going to break y'all apart. And now you're not going to get the perks or the love or the attention that used to be like, oh, now they're going to think I'm a hater. Or it could be that you fear that if you kind of become like labeled as the problem child for giving tons of feedback, that it's not going to be seen or is held at the same caliber as other customers. So psychological safety, number one. Number two would be, do you have clear communication protocols for what to do once you get that feedback? Because there's tons of companies that get tons of feedback, but they never action on them. Or if they do, they don't like communicate that. Or they don't communicate why they didn't do things that were clearly like requested. So there could be, your brand could be getting requests for something that is never going to be in your roadmap. That's just not the product that your leadership and founders want to be. But you just act like you didn't see it. And so I think there needs to be an understanding and a communication protocol for, all right, once we get feedback, what is the process that we go through? How do we determine what will get accepted, what will get shipped, what will get ignored, what will get like put on the roadmap, but like delayed a bit? And just having that thought process, because right now, if you don't have that, then your customers are going to put feedback into what feels like the void. Like it feels like I'm going to fill out this survey, never knowing what happens. Like, I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to go into this like magical fairyland where feedback lives. And so what happens over time is the people who were giving feedback, if they don't hear anything back, if they don't get any kind of validation of their ideas, if they don't see any change or any updates that kind of reflect their feedback, then eventually they're going to give up. They're going to go quiet. Like for every quiet, unsatisfied customer is someone who was very loud in the beginning, who felt ignored. And they're like, why would I? Because at the end of the day, you want those people to feel like they're partners in the growth of a company. And if they don't feel like they get to be a part of that, then it's going to feel like you're just picking their brain and then not taking them seriously for it, instead of having those people feel empowered. Because I've seen it happen. So-and-so pitches something, a feature that they think would change their work and make them love the platform so much more. Product team creates it and ships it, updates that person to let them know that it's going to be a thing. That person acts like it's their firstborn child. They tell everybody, look what I brought into the world. This exists because of me, because I'm the one that asked for it. Like, that's marketing you can't buy. But they're going to tell everyone. They're going to act like it's their baby. But that's empowerment. They feel like they have a seat at the table. They feel heard and validated. Like, that's how you build not only trust, but brand love. Now they feel intrinsically a part of the company because a feature update exists because of them. Like, that's huge. And it all comes down to you listened, you communicated, and then you let them have that fandom piece. You let them go nuts and just really kind of geek out over what they got to be a part of. Yeah.
It's almost like most brands just don't have time for it. Or that's the feeling that you get. Well, I don't really have time to be that customer centric. I wonder, you've been involved with a lot of brands. You've seen kind of the inner workings of different organizations, and I'm wondering what are some key ingredients that go into truly creating a customer-centric culture within that organization, within that brand?
I think the first thing is you have to understand it takes a village. So it takes everybody. It takes every employee that's customer facing. It takes every employee that touches something that's customer facing. And it takes the visibility of all those teams working together with a common good. If you're all actively working together to make sure that the customer experience is the best it can be, and that becomes the North Star, then I truly believe all of the business metrics will work out. Like it all evens out. Instead, what you have is everyone's pushing for the business goal. And then so what they do is then they work backwards. And so what they're thinking is basically, how can I get to so-and-so? And so think about it like a journey, because you build a customer journey map. If you're going to have two very different trips. If you say, okay, AI, build me a roadmap. I'm going to be going to New York and I want to drive. Great. All right, cool. Here we go. Here's a trip. It's going to take the shortest route. And it's going to tell me like any major like gas stops that I need to do. It's going to be very efficient. Here's where you want to go. Here's the quickest route, because obviously time is important. Versus, hey, I want to drive to New York, but I want to stop at Hershey, Pennsylvania on the way and see the candy shop. Is that possible? Is that on the way even? I'm not even sure. What other spots should I go on the way? Because if I'm going to drive it, I'd love to have a scenic route. Like, what's the prettiest route? Same destination. Very different experience.
Right.
Based off of what we're doing. So you're thinking from the business perspective, I need the shortest route. Let's go. Versus the customer who wants to meander a little bit, who wants to see the sights, who wants to have a good time.
Smell the roses a little bit.
I want to stop and see, could I go down the Blue Ridge Parkway a little bit of this? Is that even possible? What would that look like? I want to see Dick Route. I want to see the beautiful trees. I want to do it during the changing leaves in the fall so I can see all of that. What are going to be the best routes for me to take for that? Same destination, very different experience, because one is focused on efficiency and one is focused on the experience, the whole entire journey to get there. And I think that that's also when you look at the customer journey map and how people look at the funnel versus a flywheel, it's the exact same problem. When you are looking and you're doing silos, department to department to department, you're thinking about, what do I need to do to get this person to the next stop in the journey? Instead of, how can I make them have the loveliest journey so that as soon as they start, they can't wait to go through the whole thing? So like, not only can I get them to the next stop, but I'm going to make them excited for the next one and the one after that and the one after that. Like, they never want to get off the ride. That's a very different mindset. And so when you're thinking about just your work and how to get them to the other side, and that's why I really like for brands, I really encourage brands to do empathy mapping on top of that funnel, whatever their customer journey map is, because how many times have you been angry, but you didn't say what you meant? Because you're like, I'm just going to keep this little hate inside. What you say and what you're feeling are not necessarily the same thing. But you need to think about that as you are looking at people and you're looking at their customer journey. How are they feeling at one stage of the journey versus another? What are they saying versus how are they feeling? Are they stressed? Are they worried? And I think getting into that mindset of people, it creates a really good addition to the customer journey map so that you can figure out what they should be experiencing and how you can alleviate them. What does that look like for them?
I think that's wonderful. And I think what you're talking about is not, it's really the experience of customer experience. I know that sounds stupid, but what I mean is, like, it's not necessarily about getting them to that desired goal, like in the most efficient way. It's about creating a wonderful and seamless experience that's enjoyable enough where they can't wait to kind of go on it.
Yes.
And man, that's a high bar to set, right? But a valuable one to reach for.
I think Chewy has probably been the perfect example of that.
They're great. Yeah.
I am obsessed with Chewy and their CX. It's God tier to me.
We talk about them all the time on the show.
They're so good. Yep. But like, when someone calls and to cancel their order or whatever because a pet has died, and they send condolence letters and flowers and sometimes like a painting, nothing in that screams efficiency. That is the opposite of efficiency.
Right.
And so, but what they're doing is showing up in such a human way that even though they know the journey has to stop, instead of having this like pre-built template of like, here's what to say to kind of keep them as a customer even without a pet, they show up empathetically, understanding. It's like, if we take care of them in this moment, then when they're ready to get back on the ride, they're going to be with us. It is the epitome of choosing the micro moments. Like, not only how can we show up in a human way, but how can we show up in a way that is so intimate to them? Because your pet could die, but you probably have family and friends who never say anything to you. Like, they never say like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, that's horrible. But Chewy's going to show up like your best friend. Be like, I know how much that animal meant to you. I know how sad this is for you. And we want to be there for you in that moment. Knowing full well you're stopping paying us in this moment. At the moment where other brands will be mad. Be like, oh, fine, whatever, we'll cancel your thing. In that moment.
And we might charge you for that cancellation.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you canceled early, that comes with a fee. But instead, in the most intimate of moments, in the saddest of moments, in the losing, like at the churn stage, they show up with grace. That's why people are lifers. Like, you experience that. And also that letter, those paintings, that's going to be something you keep in your house for the rest of your life. That becomes a keepsake.
And you talk about it.
And you talk about it. How many brands have living, breathing keepsakes in customers' homes that they can't wait? Be like, oh, what was that? And now you become a story. You become a part of the identity of this person. And so now when they think about something that's really tragic that happened to them, you become a bright spot. You become a lovely moment of kindness and compassion in what was a really sad moment. Like, that is the micro moment of micro moments. Like, no one does it like them. Like, I am obsessed with Chewy.
I'm so glad you brought them up, because I was struggling to find an example of that, and it's specifically them. And
yeah, it's them.
So many times. Yeah. I mean, and that model is so, it seems so difficult to replicate, but at the same time, pretty simple.
Yeah.
That brings me to one of my last questions. And I'm so, you've been so generous with your time, but I did want to know, from your experience, your vast experience with multiple companies at multiple levels, what's the one thing you would change about how most companies think or approach customer experience?
It's a good question. I think it needs to come from a place of genuine care. And I think that that's the one thing you can't teach. And so at the end of the day, you will do things that you would never put in an Asana board. There'll be tasks that you do that you never like put on a to-do sheet. It's not going to be on a run of show spreadsheet either. Hire people who genuinely care, and then take care of the caregivers. Like, the people, like, if you are treating your employees badly, you are taking up brain space that they could be using to take care of their customers. So, like, if your employees are terrified about losing their jobs, which I know in this economy right now, there's a lot of people who are facing layoffs or who fear layoffs. The people who want to take care of your customers, that changes their energy. They start doing things more to save themselves versus maybe doing those smaller micro moments because they don't have the time. They need to really drive efficiency. They need to take on more accounts. They need to do all this other stuff. And so your customers feel that. Your customers can feel it. They may not know what it is, but they can feel that something's different. Like, so-and-so never checks in as much as they used to, or they feel a bit frazzled, or I can tell that they're overwhelmed. And then when those layoffs happen, and you're laying off the customer success team and thinking that you can just replace them with AI, or you're like cutting the community team in half, or you're doing all these things, I just need leadership to remember that just as your customers are not numbers in a spreadsheet or are more than numbers in a spreadsheet, so are your employees. And when you are letting those people go, you are literally slicing off a layer that is intimately touching your customers. And so in a lot of ways, you're going to have to rebuild those relationships because you let go of their person.
And that hits close to home. One of the interviews that I had early on was with a contact center supervisor, and I was asking her, this is a really difficult job. How do you find people? Like, what's the thing that you look for in folks that will succeed in this job, in this role? And she said, the only thing I can't teach them is empathy. They either have it or they don't. I want to talk about one last thing. So for our listeners who are thinking this is brilliant, I want more of everything Christina Garnett has to offer. Oh my gosh, if only she had a book. Well, guess what? She does have a book coming out.
It's in September. We got time. We got it. We got to survive the summer.
Okay. It's called Transforming Customer Brand Relationships. Use emotional connection to build loyalty. And I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about that book, what it covers, where you're coming from, why you felt compelled to write it, because it's a huge undertaking. And I just, maybe whet the appetite of our listeners to keep in mind that that's September 30th, I think, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be released in the US. And then I need you to promise us that after it gets released that you'll come back and talk to us. But please tell us about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's broken into 3 pieces. So the first piece is bringing all of these different elements together. So I talk about behavioral science, I talk about social listening, I talk about customer care, customer support, what that looks like, how social media plays a role in the voice of the customer and how that drives advocacy and brand love. And then the second is bringing that all together to say, how do we break down these silos to really be able to create a customer-centric group as we create community, because community is the solution for silos. It basically is the antidote for silos. And so bringing all those pieces together so that you have your customers can come into the community, your product, your sales, your marketing, your success can all go into this community as well. And I break down how to build that community from scratch, from research, questions you need to ask, to launching, to what does that look like? What tech stack should you have? What kind of time frame should you be looking at? And then the third part is what happens when it falters? What happens when there's a PR crisis? What happens when something bad happens and now you have a lot of hate in your social media comments? And how does AI impact all of this in the future? How is AI going to play a role in bringing us together or separating us even further when it comes to these customer relationships? So I hope you'll enjoy it, and that it's a really great testament to all of the moving pieces. I've been able to work with some really great experts who've shared their thoughts on all of these individual pieces to really come to the table to showcase that it does take a village. And so the main message of the book is like, you're going to have to collaborate. You're going to have to take an axe to all those silos. And this is why all of these individual pieces are more important than you got to bring them all together.
Well, I have pre-ordered it already.
Thank you.
And I cannot wait for you to return when we can unpack the insights that you have in that book. And one of the things that we do like to do when we have an author on the show is we like to give away their books to our audience for free. So anybody that comments with an insight from your particular episode when we cover the book with the hashtag CXWise, we send them a free book of yours because we like to share the knowledge. But I got to tell you, Christina, you've been so generous with your time. We've gone over. I could continue to speak to you and chat with you about all things from Marvel to teaching to empathy. And I just can't tell you how thankful I am that you've made us all a little bit CX wiser. So thank you so much, my friend, for being here. And I can't wait to see you again.
Thank you so much.